for the acting, for the setting, and the gore.
And I only spoiled the second film to tell you guys, do not watch it.
It's insane, right?
Art the Clown.
I'm something different.
Hello, friends, and welcome back to a modern horror movie talk. I'm your host, Tyler Nichols, and we've got Andrew Hatfield back for another one. Andrew, how you doing?
Hey, I'm doing good, Tyler. How are you?
Oh, not too bad. Not too bad. I had mentioned, I think 2 shows ago on the Evil Dead one that I had some secret news, and I'm no longer embargoed, so I can tell you guys. I got to see The Flash. I got flown out by Warner Brothers to Los Angeles, and yeah, I got to see it 2 months early, and it's amazing. I know this isn't. I know that this is a horror show, but I know that there's some crossover, and yes, if you're looking forward to it, continue looking forward to it because it's amazing.
Well, yeah, they just released that preview where Michael Keaton says his line from Batman '89, and our generation, I'm sure, is excited to hear that, regardless of horror or not.
You want to get nuts? Let's get nuts.
Yeah, and so that's the thing too, is that I got to see that in the theater without knowing that line was coming. So then finding out that it was in a trailer, I was like, son of a bitch. I was hoping that it would be a secret, but I think that that's just going to be one of those things. There's so many secrets in that film that I'm sure there's going to be stuff revealed just in trailers and stuff, because that's the world we live in nowadays, where like there's a big cameo in Shazam that was literally spoiled in the TV spots, so they're just trying to get people to the theater.
Well, yeah, I mean, you can apparently you can watch the Mario movie on Twitter right now, or you could for a little bit.
You could, so. Yes, it was taken down. I actually saw it up there. I was shocked, and it was also not a cam vid, so I was very I didn't understand, because there's no non-cam vid that's released. So then I was like, how did they get it? There was a watermark on it from them, but yeah, I enjoy that kind of stuff, because it's like, because I also saw Avatar: The Way of Water was up there, but that one's released digitally, so it's like that one I understand. This one I was just like, wait, how did they have that? But this is modern horror movie talk, not modern video game and comic book movie talk. As you'll notice, May is really, I don't know, it's pretty scant with horror releases. There are some, like, I'm not sure if you saw The Black Demon, but it's a giant shark movie with Josh Lucas, and I really enjoyed it, but I don't know, I can't imagine many viewers would end up seeing it, and so I just didn't think it was worth checking out. But hey, you guys, comment below if you want to see us talk about some Josh Lucas shark action. I promise you, it will not be an interesting episode.
We'll make it a 55-minute episode just about that movie. We'll make it work.
I don't even think I could do that. There's not even 55 minutes of things to talk about in that.
Well, I was really excited to do Salem's Lot with you, and that movie has disappeared into the ether. It's not on the schedule anymore, but it was supposed to be May. It was like May 23rd.
It's completely disappeared, to the point where it's kind of in a similar situation to the Meg 2, The Trench, which they just announced, or they just revealed the trailer for at CinemaCon, and which I'm so excited for, because those movies are such dumb fun, and I actually read the books, so I'm just looking forward to whatever dumb stuff they come up with. However, we've been talking about a lot of I don't even know, this random stuff, but we got to get into something else that I very much enjoy talking about. What are you drinking?
Well, I'm going old fashioned, since Lance isn't here. I gotta bring the class into it, but it's an apple brandy old fashioned, and it's just one of those pre-mixed ones, but it's really good dessert drink. But I got the nice ice cube going for it, so making it a little classy.
I think I feel like I've seen that the premix in the stores.
It's good. What about you? What do you got?
So I went very, very classy. This is some Squirt with vodka. Yes, it is a super classy drink, because I had beer, but I didn't really want to drink it. And so I was like, well, I have some other elements that I can combine together to make a delicious drink. And it's not that good, because no one told me that apparently Coca-Cola changed the recipe for Sprite, or for Squirt. So it's not nearly as tart.
No, I feel like you'd need some sort of flavored vodka, like a green apple vodka or something like that, to make it a little bit more memorable, probably.
And I always say any kind of cocktail, that's why I didn't call it a cocktail. You need 3 elements for a cocktail, and I literally just have the 2 because I do not have I need to get some grenadine, I need to get some lime juice, I just need to get stocked up on some stuff because I'm not stocked.
Run away,
But I had this whole spiel about there not being many horror movies out this month. And so because of that, we're going to do things a little differently because we want to then still, keep this going, even though there's not new releases. So the Arrow himself, John Fallon, gave us a fantastic idea, and I think that we're going to do it. So this is our 3 Netflix recommendations, horror movies that are on Netflix. This does not need to be Netflix originals. And also, I should state that there's technically 6 here because Andrew and I will be doing a list of our own, but I just say 3 for now, just on the off chance that we overlap. That way, if we just have 5, then, that happens. But okay, we're going to get this going, and I've been talking way too much in this. So Andrew, what's your first one up?
All right. So first of all, I love the idea because, I used to work at Blockbuster for 8 years, and I loved recommending things to people. And also, how many times do we all sit down in the, almost dozen streaming services and just keep looking and keep looking and keep looking? So hopefully this alleviates that for some people. But it's kind of a spoiler alert, but I kind of want to get out of the way to have that good conversation, is Apostle. And Tyler, why don't you tell me how you feel about Apostle first? It's 2018. It's not. I can't tell if it's a Netflix original. I know it premiered on Netflix, but it also premiered in theaters. But I really enjoy it. But
Gareth Evans, correct?
Yep, the guy that did the 2 Raid movies and not much else. Although those are great movies.
Yeah, I will say right now, I absolutely. Oh my God, I didn't do this. You guys are going to notice that suddenly I got in much better quality out of nowhere. You don't need to worry about that. But the Raid movies I absolutely love, and I was really looking forward to Apostle because I thought that Gareth Evans was one of my new directors, and I hated Apostle so much, where I have never been so bored watching a movie. So when you mentioned that you were going to have this on your list, I was very excited because I just want to know, like, what do you like about it? What's enjoyable for you?
Well, first of all, I'm kind of a sucker for folk horror. My older brother used to have the VHS of The Wicker Man, like, stashed in the closet, and I would just look at the side, and I'd study it and everything, almost like a mini video store. But folk horror has become interesting. I think it's got like 25 movies from Severin. It's their folk horror collection. A bunch of them are on Shudder. And I like that era. I like the cult setting. I liked that it was in 1905. I liked all the elements. I will say that I think it's 2 hours and 16 minutes. It's probably 25 minutes too long. And the ending is a little bit of a letdown. But yeah, I'm an easy mark, I guess, for it. I like the cult setting. I like the early 1900s setting, and I like folk horror in general. Also, I mean, Dan Stevens, when all of my wife and her family are watching Downton Abbey with him in it, I'm watching him in The Guest, which I know some people don't consider full horror. It's more of a thriller, but I like him. I like most of the rest of the cast. I thought the gore was really brutal. It reminded me of those games Outlast a little bit, especially the second one. But no, I really liked it. I will say I haven't watched it since. It's not like it's in a regular rotation for me. But when I saw it on there, I was like, you know what? When am I going to talk about this movie again? So I wanted to throw it out there.
Well, and that's the thing too, is that because I watched this, I think, if it wasn't the day of, it was like the midnight release. It was one of those where I was looking forward to it so much. And I had lived with my brother at the time, so I was very much in just like the bachelor mindset where I'm like, well, I'm watching everything the day of, the moment it comes out, and having a lot of fun for the most part. And then Apostle came up, and I remember not liking it and being very annoyed by a lot of the things in it. However, I do think it's something that I could see people enjoying aspects of it. But again, I was so pissed off. I wanted Gareth Evans to be what would become Mike Flanagan, Ari Aster, where it's like these people that I had such high hopes for in the horror world that, yeah, it finally happened with them. That then I thought it was going to happen with Gareth Evans. So again, it's probably just mismanaged expectations. However, I still just, it's one of those movies I can't imagine I will ever watch again.
Well, and it's polar opposite from those two Raid movies. Those are some of the I preach to anyone I can. Those are some of the best action films of all time.
So good.
And this was not an action movie at all. And I will say, I don't know if you watched the preview before you watched it, but the preview made it look like it moved a little faster. And no, it sure didn't. But I'm also, I went through a phase where I was watching really long Italian spaghetti western and horror movies, and those aren't quick movies. So I think I got desensitized to things that are slow a little bit,
Well, and I think that's the thing to remember too about anything that's kind of a long or slower paced film is that you really have to be just in the right mood for it. And I try to always acknowledge that when it's a pacing issue and try to just say like, it's just the pacing, because pacing is a huge deal for me. But it's also a thing that I think that people can deal with it. Like it's not such a deal breaker for other people that I think it's an issue. I think it's just me that it's the problem with. But again, that's just from what I have picked up on from, talking to others about this kind of stuff. I also want to know what you would, and you don't have to do this right now, but your rating. I want to do ratings for each of the movies that we do.
Yeah, I agree with that. What state of mind you're in can affect the movie. There's a couple of movies on because I have like, you and I have joked about this. I have this stack of movies because I'll do a bunch of blind buys. I have a couple up there that I've fallen asleep twice on, and the movies aren't bad. I'm just not in the right, 10 o'clock at night is not the right time to start those movies. It needs to be when I'm, before work and I got coffee in hand, I'm ready to go. And yeah, I guess, like we do, I guess if I was going to rate the movie, and I've only seen it once, I was kind of, it's probably not, high marks anymore if I forgot about it and was only reminded when we started doing this list. But I think I'd give it a good 7 out of 10, honestly, for the acting, for the setting and the gore. Particularly there's the real famous kill where the father of a girl that gets impregnated ends up killing the guy, and
brutal.
That's probably what this movie is. Yeah, and then I forget, he's got a name, but there's like a sentinel or something that's in the bar, and he grinds up people for sacrifices. Yeah. So yeah, I'd say 7 out of 10. I'm sure if I watched it, it could drop to a 6 or go to an 8 again. But just right now thinking about it, it's a 7 out of 10. How low are you going?
So I actually, because I wanted to make sure, because again, I remember this movie, but it's not so in my memory where I want to just spit that venom and like feel confident about it, where I'm like, oh shit, well, if I say this, then I could feel bad. But so I'm going to read from you my Letterboxd review from October 12th, 2018. A boring film that rides solely on directed by Gareth Evans. The story is thin, the character's dumb, and goes from beautiful to ugly in an instant. There are several night scenes that I had no idea what was going on. God, what a disappointing film. 1 star, aka 2 out of 10.
Oh man.
I will say too, this is a much more stern Tyler, and one that if I had to review this movie, I would not be giving it a 2 out of 10. This movie is like a 4 and me hating it. You know what I mean? I think it makes some points, but we need to get past this apostle, because I feel like we got a negative start to things. And so
sure, get it out of the way.
Instead, what I want to focus on is I got some Mike Flanagan love coming your way, because Mike Flanagan is straight up one of my favorite people in all of horror. And I don't believe this is my first introduction to him, but this is when I was like, okay, I want him doing everything, because I had originally seen this film with Olivia Cooke called Ouija. And by the way, it's called Ouija. It's not Ouija. Fuck off. Ouija. I remember just thinking like it was such a silly movie and so pointless, that then when Ouija Origin of Evil came out, And it's like it's set in the is it set in the 80s or maybe is it the early 90s?
Yeah, it's not contemporary, but it's close enough.
And it's so well done. It's so well done. Yeah. It's a Ouija movie, and it's a sequel to a bad movie.
Yeah, and first of all, regardless of what Witchboard tries to teach us about Ouija, I agree. I grew up with Ouija board, and it will stay that way. I remember watching this, and to this day, I still haven't seen the first one. I only watched this because I heard it was on a bunch of lists of underrated sequels or underrated horror movies. And of course, Mike Flanagan. My first introduction to him was my oldest brother had suggested his first movie, Absentia. Have you seen that one?
That is one that I have seen, actually. I have not seen his second film, Before I Wake, but I have seen Absentia.
Which is funny because I almost picked that for today, but we would have had far too much Flanagan, if that's even possible. But,
way too much Flanagan.
Yeah, and for the record, that one's worth watching for sure. It's definitely a lesser Flanagan, but
he's also been very adamant that it not be considered horror. So
yes,
take that with a grain of salt in terms of recommendations, because it's like, well, if you're just looking for horror, maybe avoid it.
It's much more of like an emotional journey than a scary one. There's creepy imagery and stuff, but I'd be hard pressed to call it a horror film. But yeah, and I'm sure, it's funny because I think I watched this after I already watched some of Flanagan's stuff. And all his people start showing up in it in small roles or big roles for Henry Thomas too. But so what do you think of it?
I love this movie so much to the point that it was one of my favorite movies of the year it came out. I believe this came out in 2016 with The Conjuring 2 was one of the other films that released that year. So I remember I had a big struggle in my head as to which was my favorite of the year. Something about this movie, I love a good possession story, and especially when it's done well. And when you have someone that can act and then is a child, it just adds a whole new level to it. And Lulu Wilson is one of the best child actors on the planet. She is absolutely phenomenal, and there's so many elements in this movie that I wasn't expecting, and I think it's because of how mature she is in her handling of every situation. I was blown away by her. Because I've seen her in other things since, and this one still just impresses me so much because when she first came on the scene, I kept comparing her to Chloe Grace Moretz. She just reminded me very similarly of her. But then I'd say Moretz had this issue where once she got older, the acting didn't work the same when she, you know what I mean? Like it still came off as like a child acting where it just then doesn't work. But meanwhile, Lulu Wilson just had this quality where I was like, this girl's going to go win an Oscar one day. Holy hell. And I've just been that opinion has just been further cemented with her other roles. And I think that, I don't know if this is her first, because I know Annabelle Creation I think it was the same year. She had a absolutely massive year.
I think the highest compliment you can pay a child actor is you stop thinking of them as a child actor during the performance. They are just an actor, or they're just one of the characters. Whereas a lot of kid actors, you're like, they were fine for a kid actor.
Yeah.
Whereas for her, it doesn't work.
Any kind of actor, I always think that the main point is that they need to be believable. No matter what I'm watching, as long as they're believable, that makes them a good actor. And that's why I consider most kid actors to be bad, because I think that they aren't believable. And yeah, Lulu Wilson is so believable in this. She is, well, especially when we'll get into light spoilers, because I'm not going to like spoil the whole thing for you, because I just assume there's going to be people that have not seen this movie.
That's the hope.
Yeah, that's the hope. And she is like, she is the character that gets possessed, and she just does so well. Similarly, in a positive note, The Pope's Exorcist had a possession of a young boy, and I thought that he absolutely nailed it. He did a really, really good job, to the point that it actually made me call back on this film where I'm like, oh yeah, like it really does just put your film on another level when the actor's good enough. And Lulu Wilson is just incredible. And I can't keep talking about Lulu Wilson because I just keep saying her name over and over.
Obviously, we didn't just watch 6 movies back to back to back to talk about this, so it's been a minute. But I remember I remember the movie having some surprises, like people die that you don't expect to die. And I will say one of my first Joe Blow horror videos was Deadly Duos, and it was Rob Zombie and Sherry Moon Zombie. And I think a lot of people bring up the fact that like God, she's always in all of his movies. For the record, I think she's fine. She doesn't annoy me. But Flanagan's wife, Katie Siegel, not Kate Siegel from Married with Children, but Katie Siegel, I think she's incredible, and I am more than happy he directs her really well. I think she has a very minor role in this, if I'm remembering right.
Yeah,
it's not a very big one.
She is who even is it? The friend of the family?
Yeah, she's only in a couple scenes.
Yeah,
it's early on, but
and again, I know this is for the horror. This is a horror movie show, but mention Katie Siegel and mention Mike Flanagan. Midnight Mass. If you have not seen Midnight Mass, absolutely check it out. It is one of my favorite shows I have ever seen. It is so phenomenally good. I'm not religious in any way, so do not be worried about the religious undertones. It is overtones, really, but it is absolutely phenomenal. And yeah, I completely agree with you in that Mike Flanagan is a good example of why nepotism can work. Because it's like, yeah, I just want him to cast all the people that he usually casts because they're all amazing. Because yeah, sometimes that doesn't work out the same, as evidenced by Rob Zombie. But what would you rate Ouija Origin of Evil?
Oh gosh, I think just for the shock value alone, it's got to be an 8 out of 10. Shocking how good it is. I will certainly go revisit it. I think people can underestimate how many movies we watch, so it's hard to go back and watch movies. I mean, we all have our comfort foods. Like mine, Big Trouble in Little China is a yearly watch for me, but stuff like that is I will go back and rewatch it. But that's got to be an 8 out of 10 for me. What about you?
I would actually bump it up to a 9 out of 10. The style of the film, and one thing that I will note before we get off of it is that a cool thing to notice is that there's something that happened with old films where during a reel change, there would be cigarette burns in the top right-hand corner, and it would be just before the reel would change over. And this movie has those every, I believe it's 20 minutes, because that's how much you need for a reel change. And it's just little elements like that, yes, nowadays, because there's just been a lot of that kind of thing going on where it might seem tired, but no one else was doing this kind of thing at this time. So I love that, because nowadays, everything is, there's so many movies that are in full screen or so many movies that are doing this gimmick or that gimmick, but this actually felt original at the time. And so I just always really enjoyed that. But what's your next movie on the list?
All right, we're going to go from the divisive, at least between the two of us, to the more obscure. And my second one is The Perfection.
This is Allison Williams.
And I mean, there's a bunch of other actors in it, but the other actor I'm going to say is Steven Weber, because my favorite sitcom of all time was Wings, at me. But I love that show. And I mean, for our channel, he's a pretty good Jack Torrance in the TV Shining. He showed up in a handful of Stephen King TV movie projects. But
also, if you want to hear the absolute best book on tape ever, Steven Weber reads It, and it is so unbelievably good. Like, he is. Because just like you, Wings. That's what I knew Steven Weber from, Wings. And I love me some Wings, but it's still a sitcom. I'm not viewing him as this comedic genius or this acting genius. The things he does in that audiobook will make you just blown away. It's the best audiobook I've ever heard, ever. And it's 46 hours. It's a big one.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's phenomenal.
But yeah, this is, and I don't know how much you remember about the movie, but it's kind of told in segments, and it'll speed up to the future. It'll go back in time and replay things from a slightly different angle to kind of let you in. It definitely has. I don't want to give away too much because it definitely goes for
I've only seen the trailer.
Well, there you go. So you are my target audience.
I'm your target. Sell it to me, Andrew. Sell it.
It is a somewhat of a mind trip of a movie. It is definitely horror because it's gory. The things that happen in it are horrifying, but it's also not a whodunit, but you're trying to figure out the whole time what's the angle? Like, what are these people in for? Ultimately, it involves like cult of musicians who are grooming, and yes, I mean grooming in that way, young musicians to take advantage of. And you don't find that out until a little bit later. But yeah, this is when I first, because I didn't watch the show Girls on HBO, but this is the first time I think I ever saw Allison Williams. And she did a really good job in it. This or Get Out. I don't remember. I was going to say,
is this
first.
Before Get Out?
I think this is 2016.
Oh, this is definitely before Get Out.
Yeah, but I don't remember if I watched this immediately, if I watched it after. And it's got some like giallo aspects to it. So I know Lance is out, but the rest of our audience might be interested. And the acting is good. And Steven Weber he's a villain. He's a bad guy. And you can tell, like, it's not much of a spoiler because as soon as he's on screen, you're like, that's a bad guy. He's nefarious. And
I'll watch it for that alone. Yeah, that alone, you won me over. Steven Weber is a bad guy. Boom.
Oh, yeah. He's menacing. The only other time I saw him as a bad guy that I can think of was, if you ever watched the show iZombie?
I've seen bits and pieces.
He's the villain in season like 3 and 4, I think.
Oh, okay. All the more reason that iZombie's always been on a list. I'm a big Buffy guy, and so iZombie's always been recommended to me because they're like, oh yeah, it's very similar to Buffy.
And one of the Flanagan guys, Rahul Kohli, he's one of the main, and he's amazing in that show as Ravi.
Funny side story. I did not know he was in iZombie until interviewing him for a movie that he starred with Rose McIver, who is the lead in iZombie. Mm-hmm. Like, she's in it, and he brought it up where I was just like, oh, are you? I didn't mention it. I'm like, oh, are you in that? And then I look it up and I'm like, oh, he's in like every episode. Just like, I had no idea because I knew him from Midnight Mass. That was what I knew. That's him as Sheriff Hassan is my favorite role for him, but he's amazing in iZombie. Honestly, he is one of the 4 principal actors, and he's probably my favorite in that. And I'm sad I don't hear much about it anymore. When you had mentioned it, I was like, I don't know what this movie is. And I went and watched the trailer, and then I was like, oh, yeah, I remember watching the trailer way back in the day.
And I looked up, the director hasn't done a ton. He did one other thing that I remember being like, oh, that was a cool movie. But it's not like hell, Gareth Edwards only has done 4 movies. The other one, I think it comes out this year. I don't even know much about either. But yeah, The Perfection is cool. I kind of spoiled stuff, but there's still a lot you won't see coming. And I highly recommend it.
Awesome. What would you rate it?
Probably like 7.5. Okay.
That always gives me a good gauge as to what level of film it is.
Yes. And it's a little bit of a slow burn. So it's not too long. I think it's only like an hour and a half, hour, 40 minutes. But once it reaches a certain point, you're just like, oh crap. And you want to know then what's going to happen immediately after that. And some people will guess, I'm sure, not twist, but the hidden thing in this movie, but it's fun to explore. And then once you find out, or once it tells you, then you're like, okay, now I got to see where this is going. So good cinematography, good gore, and then Steven Weber is a bad guy. I don't need to say anything else other than that. So I'd definitely say 7.5. How would you rate the trailer? Do you remember?
I would rate it a 6 out of, no, actually a 5 out of 10, because I had no desire to watch the movie after. A 6, I think I might want to watch the movie, but also for some reason, I didn't remember Steven Weber. If I had paid attention to the fact that Steven Weber was in it, I probably would have cared more, because I love me some Steven Weber.
I don't think he was in the trailer at all, which is also like when the credits start rolling, I did the Leo DiCaprio from Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I was like, oh, it's him. So I was all about it. I was like, one of the Hackett brothers from Wings is in this. I'm in. And then he becomes a bad guy. And I was like, perfect. Even better.
I'll maybe check it out. I don't know. We'll see. Again, Allison Williams, I just have, I don't know, issues with, but
do it for Steven Weber, if nothing else.
I'll do it for Steven Weber.
There you go.
So this next one is a film that I realized after we had even started this, I had planned on bringing up my Blu-rays, because I own these movies. I own a bunch of these movies on Blu-ray. So I was like, oh, I can talk to them about them on there, but forgot them. So they're downstairs. But this next one actually is not even released on Blu-ray, because it's a Netflix original that last I knew they are refusing to release. It's same with Midnight Mass. Gerald's Game, because I am continuing the Mike Flanagan love, because he is just so amazing. And I think the big reason one of the reasons too, the whole reason that we're doing the show is to be able to talk about films that we wouldn't be able to otherwise and try to give you guys some like recommendations. But this movie, I feel like, is something that needs to be discussed because it's so impressive for what Flanagan was able to do with King's short story, because I never would have imagined that someone could have gotten a full film out of that short story. I just never in a million years.
Yeah, that my brother, who's the biggest King fan I know, he always told me that, and this is long before this came out, but he told me like this and Dolores Claiborne would be the ones that he would never think would be movies. And sure enough, I mean, Dolores Claiborne ended up being a movie that I think most people forget about. But this movie is so layered, and it's shot differently depending on what they're talking about. And it's, oh yeah, this is a great movie, and I would own this if it was on physical media, but alas, it's not.
Yeah, if you could own it, but that's those few times that I am without internet, where I'm like, I gotta watch Gerald's game, son of a bitch. But there's so many elements of this that I think the cinematography has always stood out to me, in that, I mean, for the most part, she is in one room, and yet they're able to get so much out of that one room. And obviously they're going into other places based on things. I don't want to get into why, and there's also a twist that I know is divisive. I will say that immediately, of just like, it might not be for everybody, but it's still really good.
And Flanagan has become, like, we now have a set of directors that are kind of this generation's directors. Of the old guard, we really only have Carpenter left. Larry Cohen's gone, Tobe Hooper's gone, George Romero's gone, Wes Craven's gone. Like, those guys are all gone. And Carpenter's not making anything. He made The Ward in 2011. He's not coming back. He just wants to collect his paycheck and make music with his son for the new movies.
You made me have an existential crisis just making it, you even mentioning that kind of stuff. I'm like, oh God, you're right.
But Tyler, we're kind of set up for success, right? We have we have Ari Aster, we have Mike Flanagan. Love him or hate him, you have David Gordon Green. He made the Halloween trilogy, he's making an Exorcist trilogy.
I'll put James Wan. I'll put James Wan in there. Fuck David Gordon Green after Halloween ends. That man doesn't deserve to be on any horror list after that.
But my point is, we have a stable, to steal a term. We have a stable of guys that we can depend on. And even and then you have their disciples. Lee Winnell has branched off from James Wan, and I was talking to Mike about this. Upgrade, which I don't think is strictly horror. I really like Upgrade. I liked Invisible Man. He was originally going to do the Escape from New York movie, and that's one of my holy grails. And I was like, yeah, he can do that. I'm okay with him doing it. So for Flanagan, this is before I really figured out that he is like my guy, or one of them. And I was just blown away by this movie. The degloving scene is forever stuck somewhere in my brain that I can't unsee it anymore or unhear it either, because it's very squishy with good sound design.
Yeah, and that's the thing too, is that there's Carla Gugino is one of those people that she is a wonderful character actor, like wonderful side actor that you never really get to see in a leading role. And I loved her in this so much, in that there's such a vulnerability, obviously in the obvious, just in that she's handcuffed to a bed with her dead husband right there. There's a lot of vulnerability there, but that role, it's very easily could have just become so one-dimensional. And I think she expanded upon it a lot more than most other people would have. And I'm a huge Carla Gugino fan, so I like that she finally got her chance to shine.
Yeah, I really liked her in this. I think her best, she has a lot of good scenes. I mean, there's scenes where she's almost just talking to herself the whole time, but when she confronts something at the end, I know we're not trying to give complete spoilers away in case someone hasn't seen it, but when she confronts it at the end and she's like, I don't need to be scared anymore. Like that's such a cool scene. And then I think this is before, but then she's not the narrator, but she's telling the story of of Hill House.
Mhm.
And I thought she was great in that too.
Carla Gugino, I mean, always gets a thumbs up from me. I've always enjoyed her. And I don't know, this movie, I don't think that it's one of those movies too that I understand, because when I'm a big twist guy, but I also acknowledge when twists where it's like, oh, that may have lost some people. It's like, you know what I mean? Where it's like, oh, I like that, but I get like some people like, well, the prime example, I love Secret Window with Johnny Depp. It's the very silly, him eating the corn, and there's just some silly moments in that. But I just love that movie, and it has such a fun twist. But I also fully acknowledge that if someone's like, oh, I hate that movie, that twist is so stupid, I'd be like, yep, okay. Yep. No,
You're also not wrong.
Yep, you're not wrong. But I enjoyed it.
God, I haven't thought about Secret Window. I'm not having PTSD like you are over the ward, but I have not thought about Secret Window. That was a big deal when I was still working at Blockbuster when that came out. And I remember people coming back going, oh, this was great. And then other people almost throwing the disc back to return it. So yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about there.
Very, very divisive film. And I think that, I mean, that's the thing too, is that I saw it when I was probably, I don't know, 13. So I'm sure that has something to do with my enjoyment of it. And so I'm sure if I had seen that exact same movie today, I probably would be like, what the fuck was that? But that's just how life goes.
Yeah, you look back at stuff, and I mean, it's hard to gauge movies and like where they sit in history. But that one's been out for 20 years now, I think. I think it was 2003 when it came out.
It is
somewhere around there.
20-year anniversary coming this summer.
So you can properly place that in the held up or not held up.
Very true. Well, and so for Gerald's Game, I would consider it amongst the best of the King adaptations. And so I would say I'd put it an 8 out of 10. I really, really, really enjoy it.
I'm right there with you. 8 out of 10 for me. I think it's eminently rewatchable. I think it's something you can recommend to people that aren't strictly horror fans necessarily.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they want to dip their toe, because there's horror stuff in it, but there's also lots of deep-seated drama and shared experience and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, that's a good point to bring up too, is that I think it's absolutely something that you can make accessible to someone that's not into horror. But I also should mention too, there are some really tough, like, domestic situations going on in this that might just make it, tough to watch. I just like to put that out there, because I like watching movies for that kind of stuff, but some people don't. So just a little bit of a warning.
That's the stuff. I mean, and again, not to spoil it, but as a father of 3, that's the stuff that scares me now. I don't get scared as much by stuff that freaked me out when I was in my early 20s or before. I get freaked out like when I see something happen to a character that I can relate with. And that's when I'm like, oh God, what if I can't, I start imagining what would happen. And that's the point of the movie. That's what the movie's trying to do. It's trying to elicit that emotion out of you. But so fair warning on that too, if that stuff maybe isn't your bag. But yeah, 8 out of 10. Easy 8.
Awesome. And see, even in this conversation right now, I'm like, I need to rewatch Gerald's Game, because I think it's been since the year it came out, so it's been a while. So very much looking forward to revisiting. But what's your third recommendation?
Third pick, and this is a little bit more. I mean, to call it mainstream isn't really accurate, but I think it's a lot more well-known, certainly than The Perfection, but probably also than Apostle. And I do have the Blu-ray back here.
Oh, nice.
So my third pick is It Follows. And we've talked about this term before, but I think this was the first elevated horror I remember seeing in terms of what the message was. But
was this 2015?
2014, I believe.
2014.
And I remember seeing this movie. It's such a good job of not playing its cards, because there's always something new happening from the beginning when the girl is running away and you have no idea why, to the different things that are chasing her. I think the scene that most people go to is either when you don't see what's grabbing her and they're on the beach and it's just like an invisible scene, and then it cuts back and you can see it because it's from her perspective, or when the giant dude, which I think is the guy from Gerald's Game, comes through the doorway.
Yeah, yep, it is.
So, when it's just a different thing every time, and then you go back and rewatch it and you'll see things in the background and start questioning, like, is that what's coming for them every time? And it's such a simple premise, and I don't think it's preachy. And I think if it had been preachy, I wouldn't have liked it. But it's just telling a story. It creates a device and it sticks by it. For those that don't know, it's basically it's an STD that'll kill you real quick.
Yes.
It's transmitted, but you don't know how long it's been around. You don't know why it's there, which I love. I hate over explanation.
Same.
I just remember seeing this movie, and this is also one of the first movies that I remember hearing the phrase that God gets thrown on way too much, Carpenter-esque, especially in terms of the music, because it's a synthesizer keyboard. So I could play something Carpenter by pulling up an electronic synthesizer and just playing something.
Just the it's the anamorphic widescreen, it's the panning shots, or it's like. So I will say with It Follows that it is the one movie that I'm like, the saying it's Carpenter-esque is like it makes sense. There's so many others there's many others where I'm like, you just mean the music is synth. It's like that's fine, but like you just mean that. Like it's not a big deal.
This is shot like an early 80s Carpenter movie. It kind of has the Fog vibes or even Christine vibes to it. It definitely feels that way. And I do like the music in it. But yeah, it was just a cool movie, and it ends, without resolution. They're still afraid. Their plan is amazing. And again, I won't spoil it in case people haven't seen it, but their plan to fix it is it's a realistic and very intelligent plan to do. Essentially, it buys time. But no, I was blown away when I saw this one. It's probably, it came out in 2014, so it's probably top 5 or 10 for that decade, to be honest, for me.
So I'm going to shock you right now. When I first saw this movie, I hated it. I thought it was so pretentious. I shut it off within 35 minutes. I was so annoyed with the camera work, everything. So when I say this, I just, you and the viewer, just to know, just view every single thing in that half hour and just be like, pretentious, just to try and get that in that mindset, because that's how I got to be, where then every single thing was so annoying to me, where then I avoided this movie for I think 2 years after release, and then finally was like, fuck it, I'll because I'm the kind of person that if I don't like something, I rewatch I will watch it again. Just like I dog Halloween Ends on this show fucking constantly. I will watch it, I'm sure, this upcoming Halloween to try it again. I'm a serial rewatcher. That's how I am. I like to give things another chance. And so this movie, I wanted to give it another chance. I did. And it's probably one of the only experiences I've ever had where a film went from so low to so high for me, where I loved this movie so much to the point that I haven't watched it, I think, since I guess it would be my third viewing of it, because there's sometimes when I watch a movie where I'm just so blown away that then I don't want that experience to be ruined. And It Follows is one of those films because it is just non-stop incredible. And Micah Monroe is the lead. I wish that she was in more things. I've said on this show many times, characters are very, very important to me. I don't know a single fucking character in this movie outside of her, and I just know her as the lead. Like the story is so strong that it doesn't even matter. Doesn't matter what's going on otherwise, because I am so invested in the rules they established and just seeing them accomplish their goal. That's really all there is to it. It's phenomenal.
I'm trying to think. I don't think any of the characters are super hateable. They might not. I mean, they could be interchanged. Like you said, the story is more important, but I don't think you root against any of them. I think they're a good group of friends, and some of them might die, but they're all there to protect each other. The pool scene's great, where they're all working together to try to trap this thing. Mm-hmm. They don't even know if they can trap it, because only one of them can see it. Which is just. I'm big on a movie that creates its own rules, following those rules.
Yes.
You can't just keep making up rules as the movie goes along or break your own rules. That drives me crazy. That takes me completely out of a movie. And this doesn't. And it's so simple, and it sets it up. And I think it does a great job. So much like you with Gerald's Game, this is like, I think I might have to watch this in the next few days because it's getting me back into it. But for me, It's an easy 9 out of 10. This is the best of the 3 movies I brought in.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I think I'm always that kind of person where I think you should always save the best for last. And It Follows is a very, very good one for you to have ended on, because I would also consider it a 9 out of 10. Just so good. Actually, it almost was on my list. I can't say enough good things about it. And so this final one, this is one that we talked all this great stuff about It Follows, and I do consider It Follows to be a better movie than this, but this is a movie that I have gone to bat for so many times, and it's one that I have actually turned many people onto, that then I've literally never had someone say to me anything less than, yeah, you were right, that was amazing. And that is Unfriended. And I'm sure there's many of you right now who are like, wait, what? Excuse me? Those that know, because this movie is so much better than it has any right to be. I remember checking this out on, it had to have been on some streaming service way back in 2017, 2018. Actually, now I know it was not. I rented this from the library in 2018, where I was very excited. I was going multiple times a week, getting like 6 at a time and watching them all, watching just an absurd number of movies. And this was on that list. And to this day, I love the on-screen gimmick so much that I missing searching. I'll watch any of those movies just for that on-screen gimmick. There's many people that do not like it, but I am not one of those people. I have seen Modern Family did an episode that was all on a screen. Loved it. It's something that just appeals to me. And maybe that's just because I am on a screen 90% of the time. But what do you think about Unfriended? Because I have no idea.
It is a cool movie. So my experience with this was it finally just ended, apparently. I saw something, but I had the Netflix disc system where they sent you the disc from 2005. Yes. I had it from 2005 until 2021. I just got rid of it when we moved out to Colorado. And this is one of those ones. And I still have I did a screen record of my queue, so I can still go through and find stuff that I need to watch.
That's smart.
I would always try to go all right, let's throw a really old movie on there with a newer movie. And this is one of the newer movies that showed up. And my wife and I watched it, and we were just like, okay, holy cow. There are times where we comment on things during a movie. Neither of us said a thing during this movie because we were both just watching it. And it moves super quick. I couldn't even tell you how long it is because it felt like it was only 45 minutes in a good way. It goes. And I do what was the one with John Cho where he's trying to find his daughter? And that's mostly on a screen. Searching. And I really like that one too. And I think I watched that one pretty quickly after I watched this. That gimmick is just really fun. Anytime they do that kind of thing, even, I'm not sure, did you see Spree with Joe Keery, where it's where he's a driver, right? Like an Uber type thing? I haven't yet, but it's
done on the whole concept of where it's like, it's all stuff on the internet. Mm-hmm. All the whole movie that we're watching is stuff that people compiled with the footage that he shot on the internet. So then it's cool. I love that gimmick.
So then what we need for you is a possession movie filmed on just one screen. That's made for Tyler.
I think they have that. Isn't that Host? That Shudder movie? I never watched it because it didn't interest me, but maybe I need to watch it.
Is that one of the 12 Shudder movies with Barbara Crampton in it? I swear she's in every Shudder original movie.
And she's got a new one coming out. I love me some Barbara Crampton. But
I adore her. She's amazing. And
I'm not sure if you ever saw the sequel, but the sequel. I did not. Okay, so I know that we're talking about the first one, but I just want to talk about the sequel briefly because that's the whole point of this show is getting a little bit chaotic and talking all over the place. So the sequel tries to explain things where I'll tell you, in the first film, it's supernatural, 100% supernatural. I don't think that's a spoiler to say it's set up as supernatural. It ends as you know what I mean? It's supernatural. And then for some reason, the thing I compare it to is, have you ever seen Escape Room, that newer film where they just try and make
Tournament of Champions, the second one?
I only saw the first one. I haven't seen Tournament of Champions yet, but I will. Trust me. Can't wait. But those where they have these people who are essentially in control and watching the event and betting on it and all this stuff. Yeah, that's how the second film is set up, where it's just like the real people, where I'm like, that is awful, especially when the first film is so much fun. And the worst part about the sequel is it implies that the first film is not supernatural and that they just...
That's not okay.
Exactly. So I only say all of this, and I only spoil the second film to tell you guys, do not watch it. Just one singular film. This is just one, like, don't worry about having to then watch a sequel after. It's one contained movie. There was no sequel. Take it that way. Because
you're doing a public service, it's fine.
Exactly. Because another thing too, the cast is surprisingly good, despite the fact that there's not many people that you would recognize. So
in part 2 or 1?
In 1.
Yeah, I was going to say I couldn't tell you anyone that's in it off the top of my head.
So the lead is Shelley Hennig, and the whole reason I know who she is because I became such a fan of her because of this film. And so she's in this great Bo Burnham show called Zack Stone is Gonna Be Famous. Really, really fun. She's in that house at the end of the street on the corner of blah, 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 whatever that dumb Kristen Bell movie on Netflix is that makes fun of those kinds of movies. But yeah, she's great. And then there's this guy, I think his name's Moses something. He's a comedian. He's actually her boyfriend in the film. And those are the only two actors that I know, other than Renee Olstead, who was on some sitcom. So it's a bunch of just random people. So you wouldn't expect them to be, I don't know, great actors. However, this is credit to the director. They filmed this all in one go. So when they would do takes, like they would just film the whole movie. Obviously, you fuck up, you do you know what I mean? You restart. But
sure.
They would do from start to finish the whole movie. And I believe they did it in like 12 takes total. It was something weird, crazy short, where then I think that then just allowing these actors to go through the, I don't know, emotions of the moment just made it so much more interesting, where then I think it just makes them better actors. The moments hit harder. And I think also the violence is actually much more impressive than you would think, where you're like, and I think it is the webcam aspect. It kind of adds a reality to it where you're like, don't put your hand in the blender. Like,
Well, and if I remember, it also like it downgrades the quality of video in a believable way.
Yes.
So even if they didn't have the budget for the special effects, they're able to explain that in a plausible way, which is also really cool. Like, work with what you can.
Yeah, which also leads to like it's the whole them recording it all at once, because they were in the same house, but they were all in separate rooms. So then you're able to get that feed. It's not just a stand, like, you know what I mean? It's not a nice camera set up in front of them that then they're adding a ton of terrible effects to. Despite the fact that I say how much I love it, I still am a reasonable human being and would still rate it like an 8 out of 10. And that's even high. Like, that's a high. Like, I'm sure there's people who are like, oh, 8 for that. But I love this movie. I have turned so many people onto this movie and will continue to do so after this video, hopefully. But what about you?
I will bring our average down just a little bit, and I'll give it a 7. So it sits at a 7.5 between the two of us, which I think is a perfectly fine rating. It's a solid film. But I completely agree. When I was looking through this list, and there was a lot of stuff that I was immediately like, nah, when I was looking at the list, and then the 3 I picked, and then the 3 you picked, it gives you that quick hit of endorphin, like, oh yeah, like that was a cool movie. I really like, especially for things like It Follows or Gerald's Game, which I think are my 2 favorites if we're going to pick one from each list. But like, I really hope that people watching this get to experience those for the first time and go through that, so I'd say 7, and that's not a bad 7. It's not like I'm giving a 7. It's like, no, this is a surprisingly fun movie. So I'm going to give it, but again, realistically, I'm going to give it a 7.
But yeah, I feel like we pretty much covered it. And I should also state as well, because I'll end up doing this again Could end up being Andrew, could end up being Lance, could end up being whoever giving the recommendations. And we're not just going to do Netflix. Honestly, the reason that Netflix was chosen this time was because it had the best selections. So whenever we do this kind of thing, we'll look at streaming services to try and get a gauge on whatever has the best content. So I'm sure we'll cover Shudder, we'll cover Hulu, we'll cover different things. It'll really just depend on the guest and kind of depend on the time of the year. But that's really all for now. Let me know in the comments in terms of if there's anything in particular you guys are wanting to see us cover this month. Because again, May's just nothing with horror releases. Again, they're smaller horror releases, but not enough to be able to actually make a video out of. So let me know in terms of what you guys like with horror releases for the last, 2 to 3 years, maybe. In that same vein, next week on the show, I am excited about this because we have someone that he's coming back. He's going to try and redeem himself for his absolute shitting of the bed of his defense of Terrifier 2. So we are going to have Mike Conway back on, and he's going to be joined by Lance Belchek, and we are going to be talking Ty West's Pearl. What's your opinion on Pearl?
I like it. I prefer X.
Okay.
I think Pearl was a bit overhyped for me, but I still think it's pretty good. And I'm very excited about what is it, Maxine, or what's the third one coming out?
Maxine, yes. I did not like the photo that I'll put it up on the screen now, where I'm just like, oh, okay, that's a photo from a movie.
Yep, that is Fern Halsey for sure.
I tried to hype it up of first image of Maxine, where I'm like, okay.
No, I wish I was in the conversation with you three. I kind of just want to watch it, so I'm really excited to see how that video goes.
I have a feeling that Mike is already worried about it. I think he's already texted me asking if I have watched Pearl yet. I'm like, you don't get to know.
No.
that's gonna be a secret. No one's gonna know about my opinion of it until I go right on. Because that was actually kind of the nice thing about doing this episode is I actually got to tell the guests hey, this is what I'm doing. Because before I like to be completely in the dark. That way it's we can hate things, we can love things, we can be complete opposite.
Well, and this is practical too, because we don't want to come with one or two of the same movies either, right?
Yeah.
So that made a lot of sense.
I also my main concern was I didn't want you coming with a bunch of movies like Apostle, where then I'm just like, fuck this movie, and then everyone thinks I hate you, where I'm like, where it's like, no, I swear, it's just these movies, I swear.
I like people.
I swear, it's just these movies. That's why I always worry. It's the same thing with I didn't like Evil Dead and I didn't like Terrifier 2. So I'm like, oh no, people probably think I just hate everything nowadays. So I had to show you guys some movies that I actually enjoy. Hopefully, I'm sure many of you have seen these, but for those that haven't, hopefully you guys can check out Netflix and be able to watch these films because they are awesome. Highly, highly recommend them.
Yeah, and to that point, without getting too spoilery, let us know what you think of these movies in the comments. Get it, if we see it, we'll answer you too. But I'm very curious if me and Tyler are too biased towards these movies, or if these are good choices for everybody who hasn't seen them. So definitely let us know. It
would bring me so much joy to go to those comments and see a bunch of people being like, "What the fuck, Tyler? You like Unfriended?" Because I yep, I do. So I'm the kind of person that I like the things that I love them unabashedly. So I always like to throw a curveball at people in terms of my likes and dislikes, and so I think this might be a bit of a curveball. But that's really all for this week. Hope that you guys enjoyed the episode. Make sure you comment below, like Andrew said. Let us know what you thought of these films that we had done, and also make sure to recommend some stuff on Netflix to us because we are fans, not experts. And so we want you guys to also partake in this. And so let us know. And also make sure to, if there's any of these films that we covered that you're like, I liked them talking about it, but I want them to get more into it. Let me know because I could talk about Unfriended for a whole video, but some It Follow, just let me know in terms of what you guys want to see because this whole channel lives and dies with you guys. And so I want to know what you guys want. So that's really all. Thank you again, Andrew, for joining me. And we will see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.